Hey guys, today I'm going to do a really basic tutorial on how to import a scenery object into Halo 4 or Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer. This also will apply for Halo Reach. So before we start, you need to have Foundry installed, which is this amazing plugin for Blender. I'll have it linked in the description. So to open this menu, you just press N on your keyboard, and once you do that, make sure you set the correct game. By default, you should have like Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer will be named this, Halo Reach is named this, and Halo 4 is just Halo 4. I have some extra things in here. What this allows you to do is essentially make like different projects. So I'm using my modified H2A tag set. So what I'm going to do here first is show the forward facing and scale options. So by default, Blender, the forward axis in Blender is -Y for some reason. I have no idea why. That's just how it is. And you'll see here the scene forward is set to -Y. So this will tell you in game, it will tell you, hey, this object is facing this way. This is the front of the object. This isn't extremely important for scenery objects, but it is important for other things like vehicles or weapons. So Halo usually has things facing on the x-axis, the positive x-axis. But what this scene forward thing does is it converts it for you. So if you like using the negative y-axis, this will basically do everything you need for you. So it'll once you import it into game, it'll be like, okay, so I need to change the default x facing measurement to face the negative y axis. So I hope that makes sense. And so you can do it any way you want. I am pretty used to using the x axis. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use -Y because that's the default it's set to. So another thing here, there is some other scale options in here. There's Blender scale and 3ds Max scale. And the reason there's 3ds Max scale in here is because uh, that's the scale that Bungie and 343 used when they made things. So if I click it, you'll basically see the grid gets much larger. Basically, when you're importing things from 3ds Max into Blender, they will be like massive in Blender. And this scale option essentially fixes that. So you probably just want to keep it at Blender. There's another thing for meters or world units. If you select world units, it will use in-game measurements. So one in-game world unit. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to keep it at meters as well. So before we start, make sure that your asset is set to a model and not scenario or sky or something else. That is pretty important. And for this, we're going to be creating a scenery object rather than any of these other ones. So scenery objects don't require you to have a physics model or collision model. They can just exist. Now, if you made a crate object, those need a physics model. I'm going to make another video on physics models and I'll go through that. So for now, we're just going to keep it as a scenery object. So make sure also you go to here, the object properties, and whatever you want visible to the player, just set it to render. As you can see here, there's also collision and physics. Like I said, I'll get into those. Sometimes when you import a mesh, you may want to check uncompressed. I think this one will be fine, but there are instances where if vertices are very, very close together, they can sometimes like kind of merge together and it'll be messed up. And if you don't want that happening, you can just check uncompressed. But I don't think we'll need it, but I'm just going to do it anyway. This model is actually like very detailed. You can see here it's like 43,000 triangles, which is ridiculous for just an Xbox controller. But we're just going to do it just to show that you can do stuff like this. So another thing, and this goes along with the scale options and stuff. So if you do add mesh Halo scale model, you'll see it will create a scale model for you. So essentially, this is how big a Spartan is in game, and there are like many scale models you can choose from. I can go down here, I can switch the game to like Halo 4, but I'll keep it at Reach for now because that's what I'm using. So you can set it to a vehicle. They have a lot of things in here. I don't know why you would want to use a super carrier, but you absolutely can, and it is like massive. But put that back to Warthog, and we don't even need it. We have Noble 6 here as our scale model. So you can see right here, in game, this controller would be way too big. So I can scale it down to. I'll do this. This is probably fine. And then I applied transforms, which you don't have to do, but it's good practice to do it. So we don't need the scale model anymore. But if you do want to keep it but don't want it to export, you can click up here in the corner where it says New Halo Collection, and you can do Exclude, and I'll just name it Exclude. It does not matter what you name this. You'll see it adds this little prefix Exclude here. Anything in these collections will not export, and it's great because you can also like hide it as well. Except I added the wrong thing in there. I meant to put this in there. So anything in a Exclude what's it called, collection will not be exported. Okay, so now we're just about ready to export our object. One of the things I want to mention first off is that I do not have any materials on this object. I did that on purpose. If you don't have an object on something, it will default to an invalid material that just exists in the game. So I'm going to do that on purpose. Now, I'm going to make a video in the future on materials. This has really good, and by this I mean Foundry has really good things for building materials. You can find missing materials. It's really good. But for now I'm just going to keep it to where it has no material, and this will default it to use a material that exists in the game that's just called invalid.material, and that's just included with your editing kit. So once I'm ready to export, I actually first want to do a new asset here. And what this tells Foundry is that essentially you're assigning the area that the object is saved in. So if I go my data folder and then I have one named tutorial, I'm going to make another one named Xbox controller. And within there, I'm going to name my asset Xbox controller. And now we can create a new asset. And you can see here that it has Xbox controller here. That is what I named my asset. So I am pretty much good to export. One of the things to note is this drop down here. You can do quick export, or you can just click export here and it'll open up this menu. There's not much of a reason to not use quick export unless you want to change where this is exporting to. But for our sake, we already set it as an asset. We told it where to save, so we're just going to use quick export. So once you click export here, you'll see this will pop up and it will start exporting your model. And in 10.7 seconds, we are already done. So now let me show you what that actually did. So if you go into your editing kit directory and you go into the data folder, you can go in wherever you saved your objects. So mine is data tutorial and Xbox controller. There is a lot of stuff in here that is used for essentially turning the raw data that Blender exported into tags. So none of this is super important. You don't really need to know about this stuff. Just know that, like, I just want to explain kind of what it's doing. So basically, it's taking all this stuff and converting it into tags. And you'll see if you go into your tags folder, you'll have a scenery object made for you, you have a model object created for you, and you have a render model created. And this is super great because it saves a lot of hassle. It just does it automatically. So scenery is like the uppermost tag. I can open that in here, and you can see that my model tag is already connected in here, and my render model tag is also connected in here. And one more thing I want to note is that since I didn't have a material on here, it automatically gave it the invalid material. So now all we got to do is just add this into the game. I added this earlier. Let me get rid of it. How you would add it is you just click, well, first off, you want to open up objects, and then you just go to scenery here, and then you can click edit types, add, and then you just want to find wherever your Xbox, or rather your asset is. For mine is the Xbox controller. But basically this will be exactly where you saved it in the tags folder. So mine is like tags, tutorial, Xbox controller, scenery. And then now I can right click, I can change it here, and you see my Xbox controller is in the game. And it is a very, very detailed Xbox controller. And you can see if I spawn in here, the scaling is correct. So yeah, once you've done this, you have exported your first object into the game. You will notice though that I cannot collide with it. I cannot shoot at it. Bullets just go right through. Those are things I'm going to cover in the future, specifically the collision models, which are for projectiles hitting something, and physics models, which are for players and vehicles and other things touching it. If you've made it this far, well, congratulations. You have successfully imported your first object into the game. So expect more tutorials soon on some of the things I've mentioned, like materials, physics models, and collision models.